We are disseminating 3 reports today, and I'm privileged to present the first one, which is financial burden analysis of the Free Senior High School policy and implication on equitable access. So that's what I'll be presenting. All right, outline of the presentation. Quickly take you through the methodology, the background, the free SHS policy, impact on enrollment. We'll look at budgetary allocation and also expenditure trend since the policy inception. We'll also talk about the cost to parents, how much the policy costs parents. We'll juxtapose parents' expenditure with that of government to see the financial burden on parents and the impact of the financial burden on parents on children's enrollment in senior high school under the policy. And we'll look at the harmonized free SHS policy introduced in November this year. And also we'll look at the equity dimension of the policy and make some few recommendations. All right, so the study adopted the mixed approach for data collection and analysis. The costs borne by government was analyzing using the free SHS budgetary allocation and expenditure that we obtained from the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Finance, and Parliament of Ghana, and the data span from the policy inception year, that's 2017-2018 academic year, to 2022-2023 academic year, which is the just ended academic year. And then also for parents' side, analyzing the cost borne by them, we obtained prospectus from sample senior high schools and obtained historical data from the Ghana Statistical Service to cost the items in the prospectus to be able to arrive at how much parents spend on prospectus. Aside the prospectus, we look at extra costs as well. Sampling. We sampled 20 senior high technical schools and TVI, technical vocational institutions. And we have 16 SHS/SHTI and then 4 TVI. They were sampled conveniently. We also sampled 20 parents whose children couldn't honor their admission in the last academic year, 2022-2023. And then also we interviewed 12 parents whose children are currently in senior high school. And what informed our choice, we look at the geographical zones of Ghana, the northern, middle, and the southern zones. We also looked at a case study of a community day senior high school, Unkwanta Senior High Community Day Senior High School in the OT region. All right, let's go into the report. Background to secondary education. Over the years, there have been several interventions by past and current governments to improve access to senior high school or secondary education in general. So secondary education, we look at both the TVIs and then the senior high school aspects. There have been several interventions, and some of them, as you all rightly know, include Northern Scholarship Scheme for secondary schools in the northern region of Ghana. Another one is the Cocoa Board Scholarship Bursaries. We also have the construction of science resource centers across the country. We also have intervention like Secondary Education Improvement Project, which is also currently ongoing to provide capacity for teachers in underserved schools, and then also bring about some project intervention in such school. Also look at rolling out of the professional learning community, which is also currently ongoing in our senior high school. And then there are model senior high school programs, or we have model senior high school. And then the previous regime, the NDC regime, introduced the progressively free senior high school policy for day students. These are some of the interventions in the past 3 decades, and what has been the impact? If you look at the last 10 years before free SHS in 2017-2018 academic year, We look at enrollment has increased from 393,000 plus to 813,000 plus. So in terms of enrollment, before the inception of the policy, from 2007-2008 academic year, it increased from 393,995 to 813,448,000 in 2016-2017 academic year. GSS transition was 67% by 2017 before the policy, the free SHS policy set in 2017. Enrollment in the then GS managed TVIs also increased from 38,714,000 to 45,215. And if you look at quality in terms of performance in WASE, if we take the 4 core subjects and aggregate the performance over the years, in the last 10 years before the free SH policy, the aggregate performance increased from 36% to 47%. That's a difference of 11 percentage points. All right, the free SHS policy. It was launched on September 12, 2017, and the president gave a very beautiful address. And his address, he mentioned, among other things, that the policy is to lift the financial burden, quoting him directly, lift the financial burden of parents and the heart-rending anxiety that accompanies the beginning of every school term. So primarily, the policy is to lift the financial burden of parents so that access to senior high school education can be enhanced. What have been the interventions to ensure that this access is improved? One, the policy seeks to expand enrollment, seeks to expand infrastructure so that it can match up with enrollment. Yes, we all know that we have not yet finished solving that, but yes, that's one of the main agenda for the government to expand infrastructure or improve infrastructure in the senior high school. The policy also absorbs a lot of items that parents were previously paying for. So items that were agreed with, the Ghana Education Service agreed with CHAS, government has absorbed the cost of such items, including admission fee, including PE kits, a school uniform, house dress, literature books, general stationery, vehicle maintenance, building maintenance, sport fee, etc. They have all been absorbed by the policy. So government takes care of these items. Since its inception in 2017-2018 academic year, enrollment has increased from 892,000 to 1.3 million in the last academic year, that is 2022-2023 academic year. And as you may see on the chart, that's the year-on-year enrollment. In the policy inception year, the initial enrollment was 362,775. And that was 17% increment from the 2016-2017 academic year. So at the policy inception year, enrollment increased in senior high school or secondary school by 17%. In the next year, it increased by 19%, but experienced negative 6% growth in 2019-2020 academic year, but also began to rise in the following year, 2020-2021 academic year, by 5%, and also increased by 10% in the 2021-2022 academic year. The last academic year that just ended, the policy experienced negative 3% growth. So currently, our average enrollment stands at over 400,000, compared to previously, before the policy, average enrollment was around 250,000. But with the policy inception, our average year enrollment is around 40,000. The free TVET under the SHS policy. Free TVET under the SHS policy. Yeah. All right. So prior to 2021-2022 academic year, only 47 TVETs or TVIs were benefiting from the free SHS policy. They were under Ghana Education Service. About 139 TVIs were previously not under the Ministry of Education. They were under other ministries and agencies. But that has been harmonized now. So all TVIs are under Ministry of Education now, and we even have an agent that is managing that particular space, subsector. So the policy has included 139 TVIs in 2021-2022 academic year, bringing the total number of TVIs that are under the policy to 186 in the 2022-2023 academic year, with enrollment increasing in 2021-2022 academic year from 25,091 to 51,560 by the last academic year, 2022-2023. Let's look at how much government has been allocating to the policy over the years since its inception. So data is available to us from 2017 to, in terms of allocation, up to the, as I mentioned earlier, we are using data from 2017 to 2023. So we have data for budgetary allocation to cover all of that. All right, so the graph tells us that allocation has been increasing steadily over the years from 2017 to 2020, but experienced its first decline in 2021-2022 academic year. That's mainly because of the COVID, because of the onset of COVID in 2020, and school had to shut down. Allocation in 2021 was low because we were not too certain of reopening school in 2021, so allocation actually declined. But we have started experiencing growth subsequently from 2021-2022 academic year to 2022-2023 academic year. The nominal versus real allocation, that is to look at what government is allocating, and if we are to adjust for inflation, what actually is the picture. So at this side of the graph is the nominal, and we obtain the inflation rate from Ghana Statistical Service to discount to get the real value of budgetary allocation. And from 2017 to 2023, in nominal term, budget allocation has increased by 639%. Increased by 639%. But if we discount for inflation, the allocation from 2017 to 2023 actually represents just 443%. So it tells that there has been a decline by 196% after discounting for inflation. Expenditure. All right, it's one thing to allocate and it's another thing to spend. So this graph looks at the expenditure, the previous one looks at the allocation, what the Ministry of Finance allocates to the policy, and actually what it releases at the end of the academic year. So in 2017, 480 million was allocated to the policy. That's the policy inception year. The figure is in million, 480 million, take care of the first batch that enrolled. It increased in 2018 to about 129%. That's 1.13 billion. So that's represent about 129% growth because additional cohort has been added to the policy or enrollment. In the subsequent year, 2019, it increased by 9%, although the third cohort has been added. And maybe one would have thought that if we've added second cohort to the first cohort and it increased by 129%, maybe if losing logic, maybe we're expecting that to have increased more than or be at par with that, but it increased by just 9%. And the reason is that in 2019-2020 academic year, COVID set in and we have to shut school, I think, from February to the end of that year, 2020, December. So expenditure actually was slow. So that explains why the expenditure increase is just 9%, although the third cohort had been added to the policy. And in 2020-2021 academic year, expenditure increased by 16% from 1.2 billion to 1.4 billion, but experienced its first decline in 2021-2022 academic year. It experienced negative 28% growth in 2021-2022 academic year. 2022-2023 academic year just ended, so we do not have expenditure data on that one. So this data limits to only 2021-2022 academic year. What is the budget credibility? Budget credibility actually looks at what the Ministry of Finance promises to give or has allocated and what it releases at the end of the academic year. In the first year of the policy, the ministry did so well by outpacing its allocation by 20%. As you can see, budget credibility was around, or was 120%, meaning that we exceeded allocation by 20%. In 2018-2019 academic year, we almost spent the entire allocation, 99%. I think that's okay. So 99% of the allocation was expended. But in 2019-2020 academic year, the credibility rate was 76%, meaning that it falls short of 24%. 24% of allocation was not released to the Ministry of Education for implementation of the policy. And you can see that it keeps declining and declining and declining. In 2020-2021 academic year, it declined to 58%. Meaning just 58% of the allocation was released, 42% has not been released, and further decline in 2022-2023 academic year to 44%. Per units of the free SHS policy. So how much is government spending on each child? If you look at the years that data is available for, that's 2017-2018 academic year to 2021-2022 academic year. If we take government's expenditure and strike the ratio by dividing by the number of enrollment for each academic year, how much government is spending on each child. All right, as you can see, per unit expenditure actually declined by 41% between 2017-2018 academic year to 2021-2022 academic year. That's from 1,323,000 to 781. So we have experienced, and that 781 also, you can link it to the very fact that budgetary allocation in that particular year also declined. So it suggests that expenditure, it will affect expenditure as well. So we recorded 41% decline from the policy inception year to 2021-2022 academic year. In between that, expenditure has been fluctuating. Second year, it increased slightly to 1,420 and then declined to 1,105, appreciated a bit to 1,106 before declining significantly to 781,000 in 2021-2022 academic year. Averagely, government spent 1,147 on each child as far as the policy is concerned. Government spent 1,147,000 on each child. Let's look at what is happening on the side of parents. All right, in analyzing the parents' contribution to the program, as I mentioned earlier, we costed prospectus that we obtained from 20 senior high school TVIs, and prospectus for 3 academic years were obtained: 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2022, 2023 academic years. So we selected these 3 years. So we didn't use the entire 3 years. We selected these 3 years to represent the policy baseline, midline, and endline period. So this 3 years will be the focus of analysis for parent expenditure. All right, so what we do, we costed the 20 prospectuses with figures obtained from Ghana Statistical Services. The items that parents are to buy, we collected data from Ghana Statistical Service to cost the items. And after costing the 20 prospectuses, we strike average and then also obtain the standard deviation to give us a picture of variation from the mean. All right, so for boarding students, when it comes to prospectus, how much did parents actually spend in the policy inception year 2017-2018? They spent 1,373 to procure the items, on average, to procure the items in the prospectus, and that increased to 1,562. You can have the standard deviation there to give you an idea of how the data varies from the mean. And then in 2022 to 2023 academic year, that's the very last academic year, it increased to 2,477. So parents spent 2,477 in the last academic year to procure. That's for boarding students. Look at the data for day students. In the policy inception year, they spent 638 with standard deviation of 180 in procuring the prospectus item, or to procure the items in the prospectus. That's increased slightly to 768 in 2019-2020 academic year, and further to 1,107 in 2022-2023 academic year with standard deviation 322. TVI boarding students. In 2017-2018 academic year, the policy inception year, parents spent averagely 1,398 to procure the prospectus, and compared to what SHS, what happens at the side of the SHS, it has just a little variation, that's 3% increment. So the difference between what parents who are having their awards in boarding houses in TVIs and SHS, the difference in the costing for prospectus items is just 3% in favor of TVI, and that cuts across the other years that we've looked at. So in 2019-2020 academic year, parents having their awards in boarding houses in TVI spent 1,619, standard deviation 372, and the last, or the end line 2020-2023 academic year, that increased to 2,545. You compare that to SHS boarding, the variation is on average 3%. All right, so this is the picture for TVI boarding and also comparing it with SHS boarding. Let's look at a picture for TVI day and compare that with SHS day. But before that, I must mention that the reason why we do not see significant difference between the expenditure for TVI and then SHS. One would have thought, okay, these are technical students, so maybe the items may have be costing more. But if you look at their prospectus, it's just one TVI that included items like overall coats, drawing board, drawing sheets, and a set of pliers. So the rest, they mirror exactly what SHS is doing, so they do not have any significant difference in terms of the items in the prospectus for SHS and then TVI. All right, back to day student TVI. The costing also mirrors that of day student SHS. Averagely, in 2017-2018 academic years, parents spent 664 to procure the prospectus compared to 638 for SHS. TVI in 2019-2020 academic year, expenditure was 799 for the prospectuses compared to 768 for SHS day students. And then in 2022-2023 academic year, it increased to 1,143 compared to 1,107 for SHS. And if you look at the cost difference for SHS, day student SHS and day student TVI, that one is, the cost variation is about 4%. All right, aside the prospectuses that we analyze, we look at extra costs that parents incur. And what we do is to speak to parents, those that are having the awards in the senior high school, how much they spend aside the prospectus that they care for the awards. So they indicated that they spend on provisions, in quotes, transportation, books, upkeep like pocket money for the awards, and personal effects. Personal effects can look at sanitary pads and toiletries. So these are the 5 item lines that they spend extra on. And in 2017-2018 academic year, on average, they reported spending 2,406 extra costs aside prospectuses. So the annual cost for 2017-2018, 2,406, increased to 2,596 in 2019-2020 academic year, and further to as much as 4,000 in 2022-2023 academic year. Actually, personal provision actually constitutes about 60% of these 5 item lines that parents spend extra cost on. Provisions cost about 60%, and the rest cost about 10% each. All right, so now let's add the cost of the prospectuses to that of the average cost for the prospectus to the average extra cost that parents incur, and see what the picture looks like. All right. We separated the Form 1 from Form 2 because Form 1, they actually get prospectus. The Form 2 and 3, they do not. So if you look at the data, we have Form 1, Form 2, Form 3. For Form 1, if we add the extra cost to the cost of prospectus, for 2017-2018 academic year, the total is 3,779, which the prospectus costing about 36% of the total cost there. 2019-2020 academic year, the total expenditure by parents, actually 4,158, which prospectus costing about 38%. And 2022-2023 academic year, parents spent the very immediate academic year, that is 6,477 Ghana cedis, with prospectus costing about 38%. If we look at Form 2 and Form 3, we did not add prospectus because that one does not apply to them. So annually, in 2017, parents spent extra cost of 2,406. 2019-2020 academic year, 2,596. And 4,000 in 2022-2023 academic year. Day student, what are the extra costs that parents spend on for day students? With this one, we limited ourselves to 2022-2023 academic year, just to have a picture of what happened last year for that. Parents having their awards at day student reported spending on average 4,400 Ghana cedis in the last academic year, with transportation costing about 40% of the 4,400, breakfast costing 50%, and books that they have to procure for the awards costing about 10%. Parents of new SHS day students spend 5,507. So the first one is actually for those that are continuing students. So the first one, which is 4,400, is the prospectus cost is not part of it. The extra cost that parents spend, that's the 4,400 with breakdown of 40% transportation, 50% breakfast, and 10% books. And if we are to take new student, which means we'll be adding the cost of prospectus to that, a day student averagely will be spending 5,507 Ghana cedis. We took the case of community days in a high school to look at what the picture is, because one of the essences of the community days in a high school concept is to get secondary school closer to children for ease of access, so that it can also lessen the financial burden on parents. So we look at it, does it present a different dynamic? Does it present a different picture to students that actually were not in community day senior high school? And we go to community day senior high school, like in Kwanta Senior High in the OT region. We took that just as a case study. The students over there, 2/3 of them are day with hostel students. What that means is that they are not from the town. They had to commute from, or they were from different communities and have to rent in the community before having access to the community day senior high school. So 1/3 actually they hail from the community. So if we take those that would have to come to the community rent before commuting to school, what expenditure do they incur? All right, so breakfast, they spend on average 13 Ghana cedis, and we are actually looking at the last academic year. The last academic year had 170 days. So for breakfast, if you multiply the 170 days with the 13 Ghana cedis that they spend for breakfast, that costs 2,210. Supper also reported. I skipped lunch because the school provides, under the policy, government provides free lunch to them. So we did not include that in the costing. For supper, on average, 13,000 multiplied by 170 days also gives us 2,210. Utilities, 30 cedis. Mind you, mostly they are two in a room, so this is a cost of, even if they are room for utility, maybe if it is 60, they are sharing 30. So 30 Ghana cedis by 12 months, costing total 360, and rent, on average, one person spends like 50 Ghana cedis, multiplied by 12 months, 60,000 or 600, sorry. Total is 5,380. The benefits of this is that children that are residing, or students that are residing or hail from that community, they not incur this cost, because they actually eat from home. So the food that is for household, they take some before going to school, and then school gives them lunch. Supper, they get back to eat from the household, and utility to is household expenditure, not directly incurred on them. So it's the benefit of this is 1/3 of the student actually did not incur this particular cost. What this also means is that for the 2/3 of these students that are there with hostel students, if there were to be a community day senior high school closer to them, what it means that they will also be spared some of these extra expenditures. All right, almost drawing to a close. Government versus parents annual per unit spending on boarding for continuing students. Now we compare the two, what parents spend annually versus what government is spending annually on each child. 2017-2018 academic year, as established earlier, government spent 1,323 compared to parents spending of 2,406. Before I go into the data, we didn't use the costing for the unit costing for first year students. because first year students actually are not average senior high school students. It is second and third year students that are actually the average senior high school students. So we use the costing that they incur annually, the appearance incur annually to compare with government. Because if we are to use the first year in addition, the budget would have been too much bloated, because after all, the first year are not average SHS students. So we use the continuing student, i.e. Form 2 and Form 3. All right, so 2017-2018, government spent 1,323 compared to parent spending of 2,406, representing a difference of 1,083 Ghana cedis. That's 58% percentage difference. 2019-2020 academic year, government spent 1,105 Ghana cedis compared to parent spending of 2,596 on the average, a difference of 1,491, representing 81% difference. 2023 data, as I established earlier, we do not have spending. The academic year just ended, so that's one. We use the allocation. So government projected to spend 2,385 Ghana cedis in the last academic year, and if we compare that to parents per unit spending in the last academic year, that's 4,000. The difference is 1,615 Ghana cedis, representing 51% difference. And I realized that government spending actually declined from, if you look at that, the 1,323 compared to the 2019-2020 academic year, it represents a decline, 16% decline from the previous year's one, and while parents' own appreciated by 8%. So parents' own increased while government per unit declined for academic year. And 2023, as I mentioned, is projection, so to be quite unfair to compare to the previous year's one. All right, so what is the impact? We don't know that, yes, we have free senior high school. Government has offloaded on average 1,100 costs on parents each year. But yet still some students are unable to enroll in senior high school despite being qualified and placed. In 2019-2020 academic year, out of the 424,224 students that were placed in secondary schools, 15% of them, representing 62,149, did not honor their placement or admission. In 2020-2021 academic year, 11% declined to 11% not honoring their placements, from a total placement of 497,610. And in 2021-2022 academic year, a total of 4,703, 473,728 candidates were placed in secondary school. 15% did not enroll, representing 68,872. That was actually an percentage increment from the previous years of 4 percentage points. Significant improvement in the last academic year, as only 2% of the candidates placed did not enroll. So 455,701 were placed, and out of that, 7,487 did not honor their admission, representing 2%. That is a good progress, knowing that a lot more candidates are going to school. All right, so but what accounts for the very reason that some of these students, despite being placed, not honor their placements? We actually had interview with 20 parents who told us that 50% actually reported that it is because of financial constraint. That's why not enroll their wards. 50 of the 20 said because of financial constraint. And then 2 out of the 20 said their wards said they did not like the school they were placed in, so they didn't go. And then 3 of the 20 said they wanted TVI at the technical schools, but they were given senior high school, and they wanted to change the placement, but They could not. All right. Yeah. So let me quickly take you through some of the cases, what they told us. For a father of a 2022 GSS graduate from Bodi district, my son Emmanuel completed GSS with aggregate 18 and was placed in Nkariye. That is what I wanted for him, to do technical program, specifically electricals. But unfortunately, we didn't have the money to buy the items required for his admission as a boarder. The items cost about 3,000 Ghana cedis. Her mother and I are managing a farm which we use to feed the family. It is not a large-scale farm. We can make enough saving for his secondary education. He is currently home doing nothing. If no help comes through, I am thinking of getting him to learn a trade. It is better than be in the house doing nothing. All right, the next case, a father of a student that graduated last year but couldn't honor his placement from Asin sub-district. I wish there is a help coming through for my daughter. She had a good grade in the BC, aggregate 11. She was placed in Agona Swedru SHS. Everything in the prospectus cost so much, from the mattress, torchlight, chop box, and the items were very many. The school authority were to inspect the items on arrival. This meant we had to purchase every item before she could go to school. I don't think that is the ideal thing the school should be doing. Because of the high cost of fuel, it wasn't easy saving enough from my driving work. She's home. Now, we will welcome any help that will come her way to go to school. The last case, from a grandfather of twins that completed last year, who West Municipal. I have twin grandchildren living with me. I managed to look after them through GSS with my meager pension salary. They were placed in secondary school last year, one in Awudome SHS and another Pando Technical School. We went for the prospectuses from the schools, but I can't afford them. We haven't costed them, but even a look of some of the items like iron trunk and chop box, which I know are costly in this difficult economic time, I knew I wouldn't be able to help these children. They are brilliant, but are home because of money. They watch the people to get money. All right, so end of the case. GS provided an intervention by harmonizing the prospectus this year, but one of the beginning of last academic year, parents raised issue about the prospectus, the differences in the items, the costing that were involved, and that particular onset of the academic year last year, February 2022, we Africa Education was responded to those uproar in the media by calling on the Ministry of Education through GES and TVET service to actually harmonize the prospectus and make them cost effective or efficient. And we are glad that November this year, GES took a step to harmonize the prospectus. We did a market survey in Medina from 16th to 17th of November, and averagely it will cost parents 2,100 to buy the items in the prospectus. And if you compare it to some of the costs previously, you see that it's actually an improvement, and it's a big relief. Yes, it's a big relief, and we welcome that and congratulate Ministry of Education through GES, Ghana TVET for such step. But is it enough? All right, because if you look at the average annual household expenditure on the quintile base, that if you look, and this data is from the Ghana Statistical Service household survey, the recent one, 2019. Persons in the first or lowest quintile, their household spending average is 5,168, with the average number of persons in the house being 6. So you ask if such person could still afford in a year the total, or even just the prospect of 2,100 Ghana cedis, not to talk of the 6 other expenditure on the 6 other people. All right. So if you look at the person in second quintile, their average annual spending is 8,250 Ghana cedis, and household averagely being 5 members. And the money adjust the expenditure. This is how you spend it, so that you can judge for yourself if there is even anything significant remain for expenditure on education, as much as the harmonized prospectus is even concerned. For those in the first and second quintile, they spend about 40% of household expenditure on food. So 40% of the 5,168, 8,250 is expended on food, 15 on housing needs, 45 5% is now remained to be shared among education, health, water, and sanitation, clothing, and other socio-economic essentials. So, yes, the 2,100 reduction in the reducing the prospectus to 2,001 is okay. I feel some people will still be left behind if they are to access secondary school education. Our recommendations, quickly. 1. In the short term, the Ministry of Education must target the policy to focus on children from poorest households using data from the LEAP program as a point of entry. This will enable the government to spend more to cover the full cost of secondary education for students from lower income quintiles and households. Already, the LEAP program has a database of 346,009 poor households. So they have some data that they can use as a point of entry to target the policy. Next recommendation, in the medium to long term, the Ministry of Education must develop and implement a strategy to gradually transition Ghana's secondary education system from the current boarding as a norm to a day as a norm, with boarding as an exception for students without reasonable access to day school. So that is the next recommendation. As you are seeing that, yes, if those who have to stay in another community having community days in a high school, they are encouraged that over 5,000 costs just because they not have access to secondary school that they can commute to easily to school. If they were to have any close to them, they will also, like the 1/3 of their colleagues in those communities that were not incurring those extra costs, they will also need to have incurred those extra costs. So we need to gradually get to that point of having day as the norm. Currently, we are doing 80% of boarding, 20% of day. We can reverse it. The last two recommendations. The Ministry of Finance must improve the disbursement of funds under the policy in line with the policy objective and implementation arrangement, cash flow projection. This will improve budget credibility. We saw budget credibility decline along all the years. If that is improved, can help the policy. And lastly, the timely transfer of funds from the Ministry of Education and GS to schools for the procurement of items needed to run schools, and the timely supply of teaching and learning resources and food staff in adequate quantities is critical to sustain compliance with the harmonized prospectus. It's still being discussed. Head teachers that was interdicted because they have to spend or they have to charge parents. And some of them, their justification is that they don't have the essentials in their school. If government is to ensure that the harmonized prospectus works, then timely release of funds from the Ministry of Education through GES to the school is very important. Thank you very much for your attention.